Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into something almost all of us strive for, the climb to the top. From a very young age, we're taught that climbing that ladder is the ultimate journey to the Holy Grail. But what if that crown you're reaching for is actually a cursed object? I know, it sounds a bit intense, but our culture treats power and status as this form of secular salvation. We look at it as the absolute cure for human fragility. But the reality of what happens when you actually reach that summit, it might completely change how you view success. I want to ask you this directly and really think about it. Is the pursuit of power actually costing you your freedom? Think about your own ambitions for a second. We're conditioned to view the climb toward influence and authority as this clear journey toward total agency. We think, if we just get that promotion or that shiny title or that corner office, we'll finally be in control. But what the research and the lived experiences of folks at the very top actually reveals is a completely different story.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the fantasy of command. We're going to unpack exactly why our societal view of power is just so deeply flawed.
The central seduction of power is this fantasy that reaching a higher station grants you this godlike vantage point to just direct the world. You give an order, and boom, it happens. But the reality is something called the responsibility to control imbalance. Take presidents or CEOs, for example. They operate within a massive web of constraints. They answer to boards, volatile markets, and shifting public opinion. So as your authority grows, so does your responsibility for systems that are stubbornly uncontrollable. You end up inheriting the blame for market crashes or scandals that you lacked the literal power to prevent. Because of that imbalance, we have this incredibly vivid metaphor that perfectly describes the reality of sitting on the throne. Instead of feeling like masters of the domain, those with extreme power often report feeling a lot more like Bambi during hunting season. Seriously, every single movement is scrutinized. Every decision is a massive compromise. Instead of achieving the absolute freedom to act, the powerful often find themselves locked in this hyper-vigilant state of pure survival. That feeling of absolute control, it's largely a myth. Let's actually break this down by contrasting the hype with the reality, because the difference is absolutely staggering. We think power brings total control over outcomes, but the experienced reality is partial, fragile, and constrained. We think we'll get sincere admiration, but it's often just fear-based compliance or pure opportunism from the people around us. We expect ultimate agency and freedom, but we get heavy responsibility and restricted movement. We seek security, but we end up needing constant vigilance. And perhaps most tragically of all, we think power will solidify our identity and our legacy, but very often it just hides a deep internal insecurity. The seductive fantasy of the throne is, in reality, a brilliantly disguised systemic trap. Which brings us to Section 2, the isolation trap. Let's look at the immense psychological toll and the very real social costs of reaching the summit of the hierarchy. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sycophancy filter. This is basically the decay of honest human connection. See, as you rise in rank, people simply stop telling you the truth. Suddenly, all your terrible ideas are pure genius, and your bad jokes are hilarious. Subordinates start mirroring back whatever they believe you want to hear. And this doesn't just lead to isolated, terrible decision-making, it breeds clinical isolation. When every single interaction is colored by the other person's desire to get close to your influence, your ability to trust completely atrophies. You literally can't tell the difference between a strategic ally and a genuine friend. On top of that brutal isolation, power comes with a crushing bill, which we call the complexity tax. Power isn't just a static prize that you put on a shelf and admire. It's a high-maintenance debt. The sheer mental bandwidth required for constant networking, politicking, managing minor crises, and defending against rivals is absolutely exhausting. It effectively locks a leader into a protocol-heavy persona. You're forced to serve the insatiable needs of the hierarchy rather than your own personal growth. And this right here is exactly why it's called a golden cage. And here is the profound trade-off. You end up trading the peace of mastery for the noise of management. If you value what we call the deep life, that high-level creative focus, the pure joy of doing the work you actually love, formal power is often the ultimate distraction. You lose the ability to engage in deep, focused creation because your days are completely consumed by the grinding necessity of extinguishing 1,000 minor fires. Let's transition into Section 3, the power paradox. The research here, particularly from social psychologist Dr. Keltner, is truly eye-opening regarding what power actually does to our brains. And this brilliantly illustrates the cruelest irony of the entire pursuit. Think about it. How do you usually gain power? through empathy, collaboration, and high social intelligence. But once you secure that dominance, power actively degrades those exact same traits. Empathy and perspective taking completely drop off. Impulsivity and the objectification of others actually increase. Self-serving thinking spikes. When you're insulated from accountability, small ethical lapses just snowball. So many people arrive at the top with noble intentions, only to find that the crown has completely hollowed out their moral core. As the quote says, anything that is fragile is a shaky foundation for a life. Power is inherently unstable. It depends entirely on external conditions, institutions, followers, public mood, health, and honestly, just plain luck. A lot of people pursue power as a substitution effect. They use external dominance as this brittle bandage to cover up internal insecurity or past neglect. But power is a terrible healer. It's a distraction. And because it can evaporate overnight through a single market shift or a scandal, using it as the foundation for your self-worth leaves you in a state of perpetual, terrifying fragility. Worse still, even if you manage to keep the power, it stops feeling good. Welcome to the status treadmill. Just like with wealth, we experience hedonic adaptation. The rush of a new title normalizes incredibly fast. To feel that exact same high, you have to climb even higher. But power is entirely relative, right? There's always someone with more. Which means the game of hedonic adaptation never truly ends. It is an unwinnable race.
Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds into a better alternative. Because the goal isn't just to give up, it's to redefine what we're actually aiming for.
So the crucial point is this fundamental distinction right here. We need to shift our focus away from dominance power, having power over others, and move toward generative power, which is the power to create. The most satisfied people out there consistently bypass formal, dominance-based authority in favor of autonomy. Autonomy is having the control over your own life to live on your own terms, rather than bearing the massive burden of commanding everyone else. Here is the blueprint for a genuinely satisfying life, the path to true agency. Step 1, bypass formal authority for autonomy whenever possible. Find that sweet spot. Step 2, build your influence through trust, ideas, and expertise, not raw dominance. Having influence without authority is what keeps you authentic. Step 3, cultivate internal mastery. The Stoic philosophers viewed institutional authority as a preferred indifferent. Nice to have, but totally non-essential. Mastery over oneself is durable. Mastery over others is temporary. And finally, step 4, if you do hold power, use it strictly as a tool for service. Use it to remove obstacles and protect others, never as a definition of your own self-worth. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to reflect on as you navigate your own career trajectory. If you reached the throne tomorrow, would you recognize the person sitting on it? Or would the sheer cost of the crown have already hollowed you out? True agency isn't about raw dominance. It's about purposeful work and genuine connection. Choose mastery over yourself. It is quite literally the only investment that will never lose its value. Thanks for exploring this with me.